And the first of which there was a question to elaborate a little bit further to Brother Hamid. How did the Prophet ﷺ, how did he dive to the level of the Sahaba and not use the helicopter approach? The request is to elaborate because the Prophet ﷺ did not, for example, do bad habits or do any lust worship. So how did he dive down instead of use the helicopter?
That's a very good question because when we look at the Quran was the guide for the Prophet ﷺ. So when we look at the Quran and see, for example, people who were drinking, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, they continued to drink while they were Muslims. Did not stand there and said, "You come to me." You see, that's an example. Hatib ibn Abi Balta' goes and reveals the secrets of the Prophet ﷺ to the people of Mecca. And, it's just something that is treason in these days when you reveal your secrets to the enemy in a time of war. And yet the Prophet ﷺ comes in, Umar ibn al-Khattab says, "Let me cut his head. Let's execute him." And the Prophet ﷺ says, "No, he witnessed Badr." He follows the diver's approach. Doesn't want to just, for one single mistake or two mistakes, just abandon this companion and, just get rid of him. Step by step, little by little. And Allah reveals Surah Al-Mumtahina. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَتَّخِذُوا عَدُوِّي وَعَدُوَّكُمْ أَوْلِيَاءَ. So there's lots of details over here. You examine part 28 of the Quran. And you will see how the Prophet ﷺ was really following that diverse approach. Imagine the Prophet ﷺ making the khutbah, Salatul Jumu'ah, standing, and the companions would leave him, making the khutbah, and they leave. وَإِذَا رَأَوْا تِجَارَةً أَوْ لَهْوًا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة. So when they see an amusement or caravan coming, they leave you alone and they leave the salah and you making the khutbah and they go. But yet the Prophet ﷺ walked with them, helped them, educated them, taught them. The companion who urinated in the masjid, everybody wants to get rid of him except the Prophet ﷺ teaches him, goes to his level, explains to him. It's a very important approach and methodology that the Prophet ﷺ used. The diverse approach is the approach that Allah put for the Prophet ﷺ in his book. Thank you. We have a lot to say, but this kind of explains the point. Well, in terms of the practical steps that we should take to gain national and local leadership, I think it's very important to start where the Prophet ﷺ started, which is to really educate our young people about leadership, about their role. Take, for example, in high school, there are electives, and there are Islamic schools. So in Houston, I live in Houston, we have like 25 full-time Islamic schools. That's a good number, 25 full-time Islamic schools. So when we look at the generations that are young people who will be future leaders, it's very important that we prepare them for Islamic leadership. Perhaps a course like the one I'm teaching, Islamic leadership, maturity, is a very important course. Islamic philosophy, what makes us different? How do we view our role in life here in the USA? Okay. What makes us unique and different, but yet contributing citizens? Important philosophical questions that our young people have to learn. Structured learning is the key. They're not going to learn just from a lecture or from a talk. Really takes a lot of effort, coordinated effort, structured learning with goals, objectives, ways to teach these young people. And tarbiyah by assignment. I have a young man, a student in 9th grade. He's in the 99 percentile in all his academics. He takes the ACT now in 9th grade or 10th grade, and he scores in the top 1 percentile in the nation. And we have many Muslims like that. You see, so what are we going to do with somebody of this caliber and prepare this person to be a leader? Okay? First, educate that about what Islam is, what the Quran says, and so on. Give him a strong background. We educated him. He finished the memorization of the Quran. He finished the meaning of the Quran. So he's a good kid. Okay? Now, assignments for him. I want you to invite, some, political figures in the city to give us speeches over here. I'm not going to help you. Take this task from A to Z. And he takes the task from A to Z and implements it, and the people come on his invitation, and the only what I do is to acknowledge what he did. It's preparing our future leaders. But if we just let them go and learn on their own and no plans, nothing, then it's not going to work. Or maybe it will work haphazardly. But we want it to work through a plan that we implement. Thank you.
Well, I guess you can say that I've always been interested in social justice and activism, so I guess you can say that I graduated from the School of Hard Knocks. I always had this thing, seeing is believing. So I wanted to see directly how people adjust to certain situations. So at one point I lived in Afghanistan, and I saw the refugees and the kids that were suffering from the poverty. Later on, I lived in Lebanon, and I worked in the refugee camps. For a small while, I was in Bosnia, and I saw the horrible conditions that the Bosnians were suffering. And then I went to study in Syria, and I saw oppression there. And I don't advise you all to go to those places, but I do advise you to enter into United Nations program. They have wonderful programs that will develop your skills in advocacy, that will appreciate your dialogue, the cultural competency that you have to offer. We have too many people defining who we are, and not enough Muslims defining who we are. We need Syrians talking about the horrible and deadly human rights that are being denied Syrians, and what we can do to advance their causes right here in New York. We have Dr. Issam Omish, who is advocating on behalf of the Libyans, and now you know there's slavery in Libya. These all go back to the United Nations, who are conducting investigations along with groups like Amnesty. And you all are not just invited to participate, they are looking for participation. So many people out there welcome the advice, the counsel of Muslims who are able to express the feelings of Muslims. You don't have to have a PhD to do that. You just have to have the will, the inclination, and the understanding to start, and the time willing to discuss what is happening in the Muslim community, what is happening to the people that are trying to adjust their status, what is happening to people whose rights are being violated. And in this way, you can contribute. As you are, who you are. Because the initiative comes from within your heart. And if any of you want information, all you have to do, well, you can contact me, or you can go on the UN site. But it's important that you just make that start. Many of you have the education. Many of you have the experience. Many of you know of others who have had that experience, and you're able to document these experiences. I advise you just to start. Thank you.
Inshallah, we have time for just one last question. So again, for both of our speakers, on one hand, the old leadership, and they put old in quotation marks. So the old leaders who are overseas grown are authentic in their religion, but disconnected with the U.S. reality. On the other hand, the young generation who are homegrown, and they put a lot of these in quotation marks, who are homegrown are deeply connected to the United States realities, but lack the authenticity of the religion. Do we have a leadership gap crisis? And if so, how do we fill such a dangerous gap? How do we bridge such a dangerous gap?
Well, that's kind of comes from a leader, so I think it's a deep question. It's not really a simple question, and reflects somehow involvement in the leadership. Well, it's true. We have two sides of the coin, or two extremes that we have. People who come from the East and from, with not that much knowledge about the reality here. And we have our own children who were born here, or children who came to Islam and so on. And we can see the gap. And it's really very important for us to realize that it's time to really get our own children to take the leadership. I come from that school. I have 5 children. I'm a grandfather, okay? But I raised my children, alhamdulillah, to be leaders. And they took some leadership. And my own daughter teaches at the University of Kansas. She teaches Islam. She teaches Western civilization as well. So here you have a Muslim who's able to teach Western civilization, is able to teach Islam at the same time, and students learn. And she takes the lead in her field and so on. My daughter is a surgeon, so she helps others. Another one is a surgeon. Another one is a chemical engineer. They're all born here, raised here. You see? And sometimes I find myself in a debate with them about certain issues. But honestly, I was here. And by time I came to understand the reality, and the gap is becoming narrower and narrower and narrower. The more we really understand the reality, the more we'll come closer to understand our young leaders and work with them. Understand the needs of our own children who are leaders. Our children are not really like the average children. Alhamdulillah, the Muslim community have children who are outstanding children. They have a lot of leadership qualities. So to really understand them, understand their needs, we have to do a lot as between two quotes, the older leadership model, or the older leaders of the community. And again, I really see a lot of need to understand the reality of the Muslims, live the reality, dive with them, go to their level. That's very important. One time, I didn't want to accept the weaknesses that I see. I say, well, no. Oh, my child, you have to be an A+. My child cannot be an A+. Okay? Maybe he's a B, maybe he's an A in certain areas, maybe he's A+ in some other areas. But again, with the mentality, no, I don't have anybody in my family who does this. That has to change. And I did change. Okay? We have to accept our children for who they are. our young leaders for who they are, and at the same time, enroll them in an educational program. Give them the foundation of Aqidah, of Seerah, of the Quran, and so on, so that they become well educated about their deen. And alhamdulillah, there are lots of now starting universities, Al-Huda University, Houston, Manara University, New Jersey, American Muslim University. There are several of these colleges and institutes that teach. And you go, and I've seen one of the leaders in Oklahoma, a young Muslim leader, like born here, raised here, his parents were from Egypt. He leaves the School of Medicine, okay, the School of Medicine, leaves it and goes and takes a year to study Islam. A wonderful experience. He goes back to his career as a doctor and graduates with that strong background. That's the model, an ideal model that we want to follow. May Allah guide us all and help us all. وَجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Thank you.
I'm kind of looking at this question a little bit differently. The questioner says that the old school is basically overseas grown, and that the youth, the young generation who are homegrown, deeply connected to the U.S. reality, locked out of the religion. So I think that problem of being homegrown, the problem of the old school is that when they came to this country, they still maintained or created the same atmosphere or ideas that they had when they were in the other country. But they sent their kids to school in America, and their kids developed ideas, and that some of their parents were so old school that some of the kids went south completely and wanted to limit their connection to Islam. And so maybe the question is how to bring them back. And maybe the answer is that we must strive to create an atmosphere where these kids believe that they are welcome to come back, that they are free to come back, to get them to at least consider some of the ideas that they will learn if they give it a try. Because this connection, sometimes a very bad connection, sometimes some of the worst connection of what society has to offer, that has to be changed. And we can change it through communication. But both sides, old school and this American generation, it means changes on both sides. It means that people have to get together and express what they see as wrong or complicated or dysfunctional about each other. Now, I converted to Islam when I was 17. I was just a silly high school student, and I met some Muslims, and I found, wow, this is really interesting. I'm going to go to the masjid, and I did. And it seemed like a very natural path to me to want to be Muslim. And through all of the criticism and hardships, I have never regretted my choice to become Muslim. I have never faltered in my love for Allah. And I believe that even kids that are having difficulty in choosing Islam over some of the things that they see in America that aren't healthy for them, down deep is a connection to Islam, to Allah, and their love of religion. but it's a plant that has to be watered. The roots have to be strengthened. And we have to bring these ideas to every single masjid in the community to make these kids feel welcome. Sometimes they don't come because they don't feel welcome, because they feel they will be criticized, that someone's going to say something negative to them. They feel like outcasts. They should not be made to feel that way. Maybe they've made mistakes, but they are still a part of who we are. They are part of this ummah. They deserve our time and attention. They deserve to feel loved and accepted. And if Allah forgives them, who are we not to forgive them? Who are we not to bring them back home to the community of Muslims and Islam? This is achievable, but really, the effort has to come from both sides. And homegrown, besides the old school or overseas grown, the overseas grown, they've got to get with the program too. They've really got to get with the program too. Because if they do, they will understand much more what their kids are going through. Because their kids have had a hard time. They need support, emotional support. And we've got to be there willing to give it to them. Thank you.